Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new TEAM therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. His latest book, Feeling Great, contains powerful new techniques that make rapid recovery possible for many people struggling with depression and anxiety. Dr. Burns is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hello, Rhonda.
Hello, David, and welcome to all our listeners across the country and around the world and in their little spaceships in the galaxy. This is the Feeling Good podcast, and it is episode 359. And we are introducing some personal work that you and the amazing Jill Levitt did in the Tuesday group with Indrani Mukherjee.
And we won't give much of an introduction. I'll say a word or two. Jill can say a word or two, and then we'll just turn it on. But I love the personal work, and every time we do it, it seems more mind-blowing than the time before, and this was no exception. It was a very common problem that I think a lot of people will be able to identify with. In this case, a mother-daughter conflict. Why can't I get close to my daughter? What is the problem? And the answer to that turns out to be shocking, devastating, and joyously enlightening at the same time. I think you're going to find it fantastic because it seems to me just about everybody has a father-son, father-daughter, mother-father, conflict, some kind of conflict with parents or children. And how do we understand that, and what can we do to turn it around? And Indrani, we just have to thank you ahead of time for blowing all of our minds in a most vulnerable and beautiful and awesome and jaw-dropping way.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that by way of introduction. That was just perfect, except that I suspect a lot of people will see themselves in Indrani, and a lot of people will be kind of shocked by in some ways, the simplicity of, the solution and the problem. But it's so hard to see it when it's going on in your own relationship. So I love this episode.
Yep, I do too. And today you'll hear the first half of the personal work. It was a 1-2 hour session with some follow-ups. There were a few amazing follow-ups from the people in our Tuesday group. But you'll hear the initial testing and the empathy phase. And then next week you'll hear the methods phase. We kind of skipped the assessment of resistance because we didn't need to. Indrani was so hungry and motivated to develop a closer relationship with her daughter. So let's see what happens. We're talking about a mother-daughter conflict, and conflicts with our parents and with our kids are very common. Most of us have them. I had conflict with my dad for sure, and we've also had conflicts at time with our children. And resolving those has made our family relationship so much closer and so much more loving, but they can be difficult and challenging intensely at the time. And when you have a conflict with somebody, there's two issues that sometimes have to be dealt with. One has to do with the inner dialogue, and one has to do with the outer dialogue. The inner dialogue is the story we tell ourselves about the conflict, and that can often involve your own distorted negative thoughts, and sometimes great relief can come by using a variety of techniques, positive reframing, externalization of voices, and so forth, to change the way you think about the conflict and to change the intensity of some of your negative feelings. And Indrani gave us a wonderful daily mood log on a moment of conflict. And also There's the outer dialogue, the things that we say to the other person during the conflict, and the interpersonal model in TEAM-CBT has to do with the idea that we unconsciously create the very conflicts that we experience with other people. We're not aware of doing that, but the relationship journal can help you see that. So the daily mood log is helping you change the way you think and feel. And that's based on the idea we create our own emotional reality at every moment of every day. And then the relationship journal can help with the external dialogue of creating the very conflict that's causing us so much pain. And Indrani, you gave us a brief mood survey just before we began, and your depression score was 1 out of 20, which means that you're not really depressed. You just had just a little bit of loss of self-esteem or feeling of worthlessness or inadequacy or something like that, but that's very, very minimal, and no suicidal urges. Your anxiety is just mild, 5 out of 20, but you're feeling a lot of anxiety and a moderate amount of nervousness. And the anger score is 0, yeah. And then the happiness score was 18 out of 20. Let's see, that's right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that would be 12, I think. 12, maybe 12 out of 23, 6, 9, 10. Oh, now I get 14. Yeah. 14 out of 20. Yeah, so indicating that there's, room. 20 would be the greatest happiness. So 14 isn't too bad, but it's not too great either. And then the relationship satisfaction with your daughter is 11. That can go from 0 to 30, and 11 is pretty darn low. And you're somewhat dissatisfied with communication and openness, moderately dissatisfied with resolving conflicts, somewhat satisfied with degree of affection and caring, and somewhat dissatisfied with intimacy and closeness, as well as overall satisfaction. So that 11 out of 20 will be one of our targets. And we'll come to the relationship journal and the daily mood log later. And so since we've done a little testing, let's do a little empathizing. And thank you again, Indrani, and tell us a little bit about what's been going on with your daughter. I know you have some pretty strong feelings about it that weren't necessarily reflected on the brief mood survey, but I know you're hurting quite a lot.
That's right. I just wanted to. I'm just going to send. Let me just tell Jill. Yes, please, Jill, if you wouldn't mind sending it to everyone, that'd be great. Thank you.
So, David, the group is sending a note saying that they don't have the daily mood log, and can we send it to them? So I asked Indrani if I had permission to send the daily mood log to the group while she's talking, so that everybody has it.
Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Oh, yeah. Perfect. Thank you. That'll help everybody, so you can see it. That'll open your eyes up wide to for sure. So
yeah. So I'm trying. So this moment. So just to give you a quick background. I mean, so my daughter is just finishing up a fellowship and was looking for jobs. She actually did get a job, and I think it may not have been exactly what she's an early career professional, so it may not have been exactly what she wanted. But I talked to some other people in her field, and they said, well, this, could be a very good opportunity for her. And so that moment that I put in the daily mood log was when I asked her about her job, and then she got pretty angry about it, and that conversation essentially didn't end well.
Sure, but tell us a little about your daughter and what's been going on and so forth.
Yeah, so my daughter is a amazing, wonderful person. She is a surgeon by training, just finished up her fellowship.
Wow.
And is sort of specializes. I guess there are subspecialties for surgery, but specializes even in her field, in a pretty difficult area. She.
What is that area?
So she's a vascular surgeon, and she works on aorta. And
oh wow,
big. I guess. Yeah. So she has been she's just exactly the opposite of me. She was very strong academically, especially in the STEM subjects. She went to all these she went to an Ivy League school. She trained at Duke. She's at Columbia Cornell now. So she's incredibly high achieving. She's also talented in other ways. She's a talented dancer, accomplished dancer. She is a painter. So a lot of things that are very amazing about her. And what I've noticed is ever since she went to college, undergrad, she's just pulling away, and so it's been for the last several years kind of walking on eggshells. I have to kind of check myself, and that just gives me a lot of sadness and really heartbreak. And I feel constantly, I feel sad and anxious, but also inadequate, and very guilty and even ashamed. And so that's sort of the background on it.
Well, so it sounds like she's kind of a academic star, working in this at a top center, Cornell, Columbia, on aortic surgery, which I'm sure is a very difficult area. Aneurysms can explode and cause almost instant death, and that she has all kinds of talents and dancing and painting, but instead of being able to feel close to her and enjoy together all the wonderful things that are going on in her life, she's been pulling away from you ever since college and graduate school. And that's been sad for you and heartbreaking, and you feel anxious, ashamed, inadequate, and probably, maybe lonely and discouraged. And is there any anger there too?
Yeah, I felt, I would say frustration, maybe, and anger at that. Yeah, anger too. And you're absolutely right. Very lonely, because she's my only child. And
oh wow,
yeah. And so just felt like this big gaping hole in my life.
Oh yeah. And then where are you living?
So we live in Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C.
I see. How long have you lived there?
Many years, close. Many years, almost 40, I would say. Over 30 for sure.
Oh, wow. Let me hand it over to you to do a little more filling in here on empathy, Jill.
Sure. Yeah. And Johnny, I'm so glad you brought this topic up to the group. I talk about my kids a lot, and being close to my two boys is so important to me. And I can just totally imagine how heartbreaking it is for you, and stressful and lonely and disappointing it feels to have raised this rock star of a daughter, but not feel that she's really letting you in, and that you feel like you're really struggling and figuring out how to connect with her and have a meaningful relationship with her. I can understand, even with so many other things probably going really well in your life, that this leaves a really big hole for you. And I just feel tons of empathy and warmth toward you and appreciate you sharing with us. And I hope that we can, help you in some ways to figure out a way to get closer to her, or to find ways to connect with her. I would love to hear more if you would share with us about sort of what your relationship has been like. In other words, of course, we asked for a moment in time, and you share this moment in time where you were asking about her job, but maybe you could just tell a little bit more. Is it like, we used to be really close and then this happened and then she started pushing me away, or just you noticed, as she left for college, she started wanting to be more and more independent? I'm just wondering, and kind of if you maybe can give us a little more meat on the bones, like what your relationship really kind of is like these days, maybe how often you talk. Are there times where you talk and it goes really well and then you just kind of step in it, or just like tell us a little more about what it's like?
Yeah, absolutely. Since until high school, and she graduated early. She skipped a grade. She was off to Columbia at 16, at 16, and she essentially just learned how to drive and then left for college, where she didn't need to drive and couldn't drive. So she left pretty early. So up to that point, I was very involved in her life, and maybe a helicopter parent, maybe not, but surely somewhere there. And I didn't have to push her too hard because she was already pretty gifted. But what I did do, and I feel guilty and ashamed and just really upset about this, is that I constantly raised the bar, and she met every single one of them and surpassed that. I just look back on those moments and just feel such deep regret and remorse that I did do that. You have to do better. Not better in style. She was achieving academically, Ivy League, go for Ivy League, whatever. But after that, once she went to Columbia, she kind of took matters in her hands, because there was some, thought about potentially like pre-med. She didn't do pre-med. She did engineering. My husband was happy because he was an engineer. He's an engineer, but then after that, she did, sit for MCATs, did spectacularly well, and then did end up going to med school. But since she went to college, it was just like this, just complete, what should I say, blackout or shut out. I mean, my friends were talking about their kids' grades and all of that. I had absolutely no idea. I had no idea about what her grades were. And it was interesting because she was, when on her graduation day, she had the summa cum laude, colors. I didn't even know what that was. I didn't even know. And I thought that she had something on wrong or something, and then, her name was announced and all of that. And so I had no idea at all. And it's been like that ever since.
Wow.
So it's been.
And Indrani, also, I'm just wondering, you're talking a lot about her grades and her achievements, but does that mean that you also didn't know like about her friends and her activities? Like she just kind of shut you out once she left for college?
Totally. She did. I knew about her friends to some extent. I did not know much about her activities. And the biggest heartbreak for me was that I didn't know, hard times. And what was difficult for her, and what her struggles might have been. And those thoughts just keep me up at night even now, thinking that, what did she actually endure? And so
that she never opened up to you. She didn't look to you for support or share with you when she was struggling.
Not at all.
And that makes you feel really sad.
I'm just heartbroken and just overwhelmed by by those emotions. And so she went, and it sort of continued like that. And the one good thing, in terms of support, is that she actually met this fabulous, wonderful, beautiful person, and they got married. And he is just wonderful. And I actually have a very close relationship with him. So we talk when we have a chance. We talk, and I essentially get all my news from him. So we haven't. My daughter and I haven't been close. I mean, there've certainly been some moments of some conversations where I felt, okay, wow, we really connected. And then, Jill, you're just so right. And then I step into it, and then it all kind of blows up. And yeah.
And what are the things that you say when that happens? So you'll say, it sounds like it feels like your relationship is tenuous, and that you'll sometimes have moments where you feel close and connected, and then you say something and clearly that like triggers the shutdown. And you have a sense of what are the kinds of things that you say or do that push her away.
Yeah, anything to do with, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Are you having any, this is very general, but it could be specific to a particular situation. Are you, being people treating you well, that kind of stuff. I remember when
trying to get like closer to her, asking questions about her and how she feels and how she's doing. And then she will, what happens?
And then she's, I'm fine. Or either she has this kind of angry thing, or that's, I'm fine. That's mostly what she says. And then there's nothing beyond that. Okay, I have to go.
Yeah. So you don't feel like she's comfortable being vulnerable with you, and that is really hard for you. You're wanting that kind of close and loving and more vulnerable relationship with her.
And then that's the kind I had with my own mother. I felt very, very close to, and so I was.
Yeah. And I was. Oh, I had another question. I think it just lost it. Oh, I know. I was going to ask you, Indrani. Yeah, I mean, it again sounds so painful and so hard. And I was wondering, have you tried to talk to her about it? In other words, have you ever, talked to her about what you notice that she's, doesn't want to open up to you, or have you ever tried to take the blame, or, have you ever wondered to her, asked her, is there anything that I've done that's pushing you away? I'm just curious if you've had any of those kinds of conversations.
Not really. I remember I sent her an email. This was, I don't know, when I first started doing TEAM and learning about the 5 secrets. I sent her an email, just telling her how I was feeling. And she actually called me. And she said, what was that all about? And I said, no, I was just thinking, learning from Dr. Burns and everyone there, and so I just thinking about you. And she said, no, I'm okay. And then it didn't go very far.
Yeah, she's sending you the message in some ways through lots of these communications that she really doesn't want to answer these kinds of questions about how she's feeling. Maybe doesn't want to be kind of close in the way that you want to be close, or kind of go deep in the way that you're looking to be go deep. And when you're inquiring about her on some sort of feeling level, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Or even really sharing your feelings, you feel like your experiences that she really pushes you away.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, how accurately do you think we're getting you, Indrani, in terms of 3 pieces? Understanding your thoughts, understanding how you feel, how you're experiencing this conflict with your daughter, and also in terms of creating a feeling of, warmth or acceptance.
Oh, it's an A, absolutely.
Okay.
But I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit more, just go a little bit, a little bit of a backstory. And the backstory is this. I used to joke about this, but the more I think about it, it's not funny. I used to say that, talent skipped a generation. It went from my parents straight to her. And I would say I'm a talent-free person. I have no talent. And so the reason, so one of the things that I've battled all my life is this incredible feeling of inadequacy. And that came early on because I grew up in an environment where all the STEM subjects were highly valued over the subjects that I liked and I was good at. And so it was sort of, it just sort of followed, right? It was a very hyper competitive academic environment. If you didn't do well in science and math and engineering and all of that, you wouldn't get into those schools and wouldn't get the job, etc. And so growing up, I was called kind of, oh, dumb, she's dumb, not in a bad way, but in sort of a playful way. I didn't really feel bad about it growing up, or I didn't feel like they were kind of putting me down, but that used to, oh, don't tell her, she's like a light bulb, she's slow to understand things, or she's just simple, things like that. And I really didn't have any outstanding talents either. I was obese, so I never got picked for any sports. I never got picked for any kind of, school plays or anything. I was that kid, who never got picked. Nobody wanted me on their team. I couldn't sing. I couldn't do anything. So it went on like that. What ended up happening, I actually got into a very competitive school. I beat out a bunch of other people, smart people who had actually gone to undergrad with, and I got accepted. There was a whole interview process and a written exam and a group presentation, and I've always had no more, but I used to have a lot of public speaking and performance anxiety, and I somehow was able to overcome it, and I got into this very competitive school.
What was that, a school in the U.S.?
It was not.
In India?
It was in India, but it was actually modeled after Columbia.
Oh, I see. Sure.
And so because one of the founders actually did her PhD here, and so she went back and.
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and actually, so when I came to the U.S. for my PhD, they actually transferred the credits because of that.
Oh.
Yeah, it's similar to the Indian Institute of Technology, if you're familiar with that.
Okay.
So what happened was I got in, and I was doing quite well. I loved it. I loved the subject. I loved learning about mental health. I just loved it. I felt like I had kind of found my niche.
That was in college?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
This actually was grad school. This was like grad school.
For the PhD program?
No, this was the master's. I came
for the master's.
US for the PhD.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so one of my professors, I think he was like a social psychology professor or something. He was conducting some study or something like that, I forget. And we were about 100 of us. And he did this, and he gave us a battery of tests. Then after that, he called about 10 of us as kind of outliers. And because I was doing well in class, and I mean, in my academics, I thought, I must be on the higher end of this because my grades were, good. It turned out to not be the case. I was in the lowest 5 in the class in terms of intelligence. Yeah, that's what his testing showed.
Was IQ testing or something?
It was a form of IQ testing. Yeah, they were mostly about intelligence, mostly about all the sort of numbers and spatial tests and all of that. And I was so horrified by it. I mean, I feel like I remember it like it happened yesterday. I asked him, how do I improve this? I mean, I thought my fate was sealed. And he said, well, just try, reading some books and talk to your friends and see if they can help you. Very nonchalantly, and that stayed. I actually got my master's at 19. I was quite young. And then shortly after that, I came to the US for my PhD studies and got my PhD in my mid-20s. And it was a struggle to overcome that. I consistently did well academically, but I just never could overcome it. I thought that, and I came to good school here, I came to a competitive program, but I thought that just because I got in, it can't be that great. And so that's something that I kind of brought with me to motherhood, I think. And I somehow probably had this feeling that I don't want my kid to do what to go through what I went through, and that might be sort of the genesis of all this.
Say that last part again. I brought that to motherhood, and I didn't want my kids to what?
I didn't want my daughter to go through what I went through. To experience that. You're not smart enough, being called dumb, being called fat, all of that stuff. Yeah.
Right. What was that feeling that you've always had and perhaps still have to this very moment of maybe not being smart, not talented, not good enough, and then did this difficulty with your daughter? Did that reinforce that?
Yeah, exactly right. Absolutely, 100%, 100%.
Yeah,
absolutely, and the way it reinforced it was, and I never thought about this, was that I was a working mother. I worked quite long hours a lot of the times because my goal was to make sure that, I had the wherewithals to pay for it. I never wanted her to have any school loans or anything, all the way up to PhD, med school, whatever she wanted to do. So I was, wanting to make sure that, and she went to kind of a private school, a prep school kind of place. And I wanted to give her all of the advantages. And so, I used to work long hours. And so I was not available to cook her, nice dinner. Sometimes I was not even there in the evenings. A lot of times I was not there in the evenings. My husband kind of took care of the evening routine. And so that inadequacy kind of hung around because I saw my friends and how they were spending time with their kids. And I felt very, very deficient. When I just couldn't. Yeah.
And is this that's so sad? You weren't there in the evenings. You were working long hours to provide for her, but then you were seeing your friends with their kids, and they were hanging out together. And I can imagine that hurt as well. And would it be fair or not accurate to say that you've been carrying this feeling of inadequacy that you have now for many years, going back to high school or earlier?
Yeah,
And have you been feeling like this inadequacy, all day, every day, or do you get happy when you're working and then it comes back, or how does that go?
No, I don't feel it all day, every day. And I am happy when I'm working, except when what I'm doing doesn't help. But I don't feel that this is a personal kind of defect. I feel like I just have to practice that a little bit more, or maybe open hands. But no, and I don't feel inadequate in other relationships. I have a happy marriage. I am connected to people in my life, but I feel very inadequate when I'm interacting with my daughter, especially when she's shutting me out.
Yeah.
I wondered too, though, whether certainly I can understand you're saying you feel inadequate when she's shutting you out. I wonder, though, you described that when you're little, people would say that you're dumb and you're simple. Yeah. And by the way, I felt so sad hearing you say that. I think most of us would. You said it didn't bother you that much. It would have hurt me terribly as a little girl to be told I was dumb or simple, or to not be picked for plays or sports or things like that. And so it does sound, very painful, and that you felt pretty left out. Are you having some tears as I'm saying that, Indrani?
Yeah. When I used to walk, people would scream, shout out, like, there goes the fatty. There's the fatty. They call me the elephant or the hippo. And I was also taller than most people around me, so I wasn't it was not a pretty picture, being obese and taller. At 12 years old, I was at my full height that I am now. And so people would say, so how many kids do you have? And I remember avoiding those places, crossing the street, because I just didn't want to deal with that.
It sounds so painful that you felt so rejected and not included and not wanted, criticized, kind of, again, that similar shut out, right? Like that same kind of feeling.
Exactly right. Exactly right. 100%.
So does it feel like your daughter shutting you out the same way as when you were a little girl?
Not exactly in the same way, because she's not calling me names or anything.
Yeah.
But she's not letting me in.
I also what I was thinking about as you were describing that childhood and feeling not good enough. And then also you described your daughter with just the most incredible adjectives, which sounds like she totally deserves. So it didn't sound over the top, but the juxtaposition kind of between the way that you thought of yourself as a child being dumb and simple and that kind of thing, and then thinking that she's just the kind of mastermind from day one, and that you did say that talent skipped a generation and that I have no talent. And so it does sound too like there's just a feeling of putting her in a very different category than you put yourself. She's kind of the smart one and you're the stupid one.
Yeah, exactly right.
And that sounds also painful. Of course, as a mom, you're so proud of her and that comes through as well. But I imagine it feels also really hard to be, shut out by the smart one. That's sort of what's happening for you.
Yeah. And that's also, it's interesting that you should say that, because my sister was the smart one. Even though consistently I probably did even a little bit better than her academically, but she was smart. She was quick on the uptake. So she was the smart one. I was the dumb one. But I don't feel competitive with my daughter like that, but almost awestruck, maybe, in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't sound like you were competitive, but it just sounded like one other way in which you're feeling inadequate, as compared to her.
Yeah, and not just the talents, but not being a good enough mother to her.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm glad that you said to us a few minutes ago when David asked how we were doing that we were doing really well and felt like we were really understanding you, but there was more that you wanted to share with us, which I'm glad that you did. And that was really the background of your childhood, and that you grew up in this super competitive environment where you did really feel less than, and where you were treated, really poorly by your peers and family. And then essentially, despite that, really overcame it, or, really you were quite successful in school, as it turns out. And then you described to us, you had this, I think we were all super puzzled when you were describing this, but it sounded like you were in this great grad school program, and in one of the classes, like an IQ test was distributed. Man, that sounds like a terrible thing for a teacher to do, but it sounds like, if I was understanding you correctly, that you all took this IQ test, and then he gave feedback to people who were at the very top, like the outliers at the top, and the people who were the outliers at the bottom, and that you got this feedback. And I can only imagine, here you are, doing great, kind of finally maybe shed this I'm stupid business, and then here it comes right in your face again, where he's giving you this feedback that you're at the very bottom of the class in terms of your intelligence or something, and does it sort of nonchalantly, as if this wouldn't be, impactful for someone to hear this from a professor.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. And that sounds like that was then, you feel like that, you kind of said that feels like it's sort of always been with you and kind of always haunted you since then, even though you've been quite successful.
Yeah, and I've always been so ashamed of this. I have never talked about this openly, not even to my parents, nobody, because I felt like this would be, this is just proof. That
Well, at least the professor was helpful to you when he said, read some books and ask your friends. That'll put your IQ way up there at the top. Shouldn't
so easy.
Shouldn't joke about it, but it seems so
absurd.
Awful.
Yeah.
He was not a bad person, but I don't know what he was measuring, and I didn't even have the, I just didn't have. I mean, I couldn't think of asking those follow-up questions. What are you measuring this against? I mean, I was a kid.
And we're supposed to be in awe of our professors, and they know things, and you know what I mean. All of that. Well, I have a question for you right now, Indrani, and I'm wondering if you need more time to kind of talk and fill us in, because you're doing such a beautiful job of bringing us into your world the way you wish your daughter would invite you in. And should we do more talking, or is there some part of what you've been saying that you'd be wanting some help with tonight? And if so, would this be a time, for us to get started on that?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm ready to get started.
Okay. Well, let me ask you another question. Suppose that tonight works out really well, and at the end you say, "Boy, that was such a fantastic session." What would happen? We can't promise anything, but if kind of miracle of some kind happened here tonight, what would that miracle be?
That I would be able to reach my daughter without being shut out. That I would be, and I'm willing to listen to, she's angry with me or she doesn't like what I'm doing or saying. I'm completely open. I want to know. So yes, I would love to connect with her.
What would that mean to you to be able to make that happen?
would mean the world to me.
Yeah.
It would mean everything to me. Yeah.
So that would be miracle number one. What would be miracle number two? Are you feeling better now?
I am.
See how fast that, and we're done. And now we can talk with the students. How did we bring about this rapid recovery? So I'm just teasing, but I love your laughter, Indrani. What would be miracle number two? Would that have to do with making a dent in this feeling of not being good enough?
Maybe. I think if I'm able to connect with her, those feelings of inadequacy would more or less go away, because they are not. It doesn't come up all the time everywhere with everybody and
sure.
with everything that I do. Yeah, I think I've been able to done some daily mood logs on myself, and I think I've been able to dial that down.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. Would this be a quick time, Indrani and Jill, for us just to go over the daily mood log and the relationship journal, just to kind of get that information into the dialogue?
Yeah, I think so. In other words, I wrote in the chat box that we've done testing and we've done empathy, and David offered the invitation and you did the miracle cure question. And so we're kind of in the specificity conceptualization world here, where we're trying to figure out kind of what it is that Indrani wants help with. And we're sort of wondering, is this going to be a relationship problem where we're going to work with her on maybe the relationship journal and communicating with her daughter differently, or is this going to be an individual mood problem where we'd help her using the daily mood log, or potentially both, right? And Indrani's really saying, what I really want is to feel closer to my daughter. I don't think that my problems with my feeling inadequate are such a problem in and of themselves. They're not a problem in other relationships. And if I could get closer to my daughter, then I think I wouldn't feel so inadequate, right? So then, David, I think, it makes sense to kind of, I'm just recapping here where we are, but I think it would make sense to go through the relationship journal, or maybe start with the daily mood log, just so we know what those feelings and thoughts are, and then the relationship journal.
Yeah. Historically, you sent us the daily mood log first, and then I asked for a relationship journal, but we can go over them both right now. And the upsetting event, which all of you should have this to take a look at, but it was just when you asked your daughter about her new job, and apparently she kind of shut you down there, and you were feeling pretty sad and down 60%, and anxious 75%, and inadequate 75%, and lonely and unloved and rejected 90%, and embarrassed and foolish 75%, and discouraged 60%, and frustrated and thwarted and stuck 75%, and annoyed and irritated 50%. And then you were telling yourself, she thinks I don't know anything because I'm not in her field. She has shut us out of her life. We are aging and need her support. I will die alone. All my friends have very close relationship with their daughters, and I don't. And those are on the first page. And the belief in all of those was high, 60 to 85 range. And then 3 additional thoughts. I was too hard on her when she was growing up. I deserve this treatment. That was 95. And I'm trying to make it up for her, but nothing I do pleases her. And that was 90. I can only give her good news. Or I guess I'm only allowed to give her good news. And then on the relationship journal, your daughter said to you, you don't know anything about what I do. And then you responded, yes, but our friend has worked in academic medicine all her professional life. I'm trying to figure out what that means.
I know a little bit about it because my friend has been in this profession, right?
Yeah. Our friend. Yeah. I get it now. Thank you, Jill.
Yeah.
And then you were thinking that when your daughter said, you don't know anything about what I do, you ticked off that she was anxious, lonely, frustrated, angry, unloved, inadequate, rejected, self-conscious, annoyed, defensive, alone, upset, and irritated. And then I have my version of this has some additional words. Do you think she was feeling hurt? You put misunderstood. Did you think she was feeling hurt?
Probably.
Hurt and you don't know anything. Yeah. And I think and let's see, in lonely. Yeah, I think you've got a great, do you think she was feeling sad or blue or depressed or down or unhappy?
Or maybe unhappy because,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'll add that one too. And then the feelings that you had were anxious, inferior, lonely, embarrassed, frustrated, worried, frightened, ashamed, defensive, inadequate, incompetent, lonely, unloved, unwanted, rejected, alone, embarrassed, foolish, self-conscious, frustrated, and despondent. And then you decided that your response in step 3, the EAR checklist, that you didn't acknowledge her feelings, so you didn't empathize, and that you didn't express, you didn't share any of your feelings, so that you missed there on the assertiveness, and that your attitude is not remorseful or respectful or caring. And the consequences is that she got up and left. And I'd like to, even at this moment, see if we could flesh out step 4 a little bit more. Could we just do that right now for a couple of seconds? She pushed you away, right? She said, you don't know anything about what I do. And then you kind of defended yourself a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And can you see why she got up and left?
Yeah.
Can you?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, because I didn't acknowledge her feelings. I didn't, tell her you shouldn't do any stroking. I didn't tell her how I was feeling in that moment. I did none of that.
Is that painful for you to see that right now?
Yeah.
And then when you don't express any interest in her, in other words, you don't know anything about what I do, and you said she was feeling pretty upset there, but you didn't express any, as you're saying, an invitation to tell you more, or ask her about her negative feelings, and show an interest in what she was trying to tell you. What do you think she was telling you? What was she saying? You don't know anything about what I do.
I mean, she's right that I don't.
Right.
That's true.
But what was she telling you about how she might be feeling about that fact?
Not understood at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, why is she feeling lonely and unloved? or rejected?
Because there's no warmth or support coming from my direction at all.
So what is she wanting? Or why is that upsetting to her?
Oh, I see. Oh, I see.
Do you see it all of a sudden?
Yeah. Oh, I see okay, I see.
Would you tell us what you see?
So now, oh my God.
Isn't that fantastic? But
Yeah.
you're taking it very well.
That is making so much sense. See, she wasn't very happy with this position. And what I was doing was I was cheerleading her. And instead of telling her, asking her to tell me more about this, you're right. I don't understand. And tell me more about what this has been like for you. Because she went through a grueling, period of fellowship and everything after that, interviewing and all that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make her feel better by saying that, oh, but you don't know that this person, a Hopkins professor, said that, yeah. Oh my gosh.
Isn't that fantastic?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
She's telling you don't know anything, and you don't know anything when you're telling her how awesome this thing is that she's telling you is awful, right?
Yeah. But she's not happy. She didn't say it's awful.
Right. Or
this was not her first choice. Like she's kind of settling. And I'm telling her, wow, this is an opportunity. You will be the, sort of the PI on this paper, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
How would you put into words then what it is that you're seeing now?
Yeah, I just missed the whole thing.
It's pretty amazing from one point of view, but very sad and from another point of view, and very hopeful from yet another point of view.
Yeah, I am feeling very sad.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you are. Actually, I'm proud of you right now. You're an outlier right now, but you're on the top of the curve right now. But yeah, this is that death of the self.
And this is what I've been doing, right?
Yeah,
this is exactly what I've been doing.
Yeah,
all the time.
Is what is like missing, like she's actually sharing something with you, and then you're cheerleading, which means you're actually not going there with her, right? You're not like she's actually was sharing something vulnerable with you, and then if you respond with cheerleading, you're missing the boat, and so then she shuts down because you're just like not getting it.
Exactly. Because
you feel like that pattern actually has been going on in other situations.
Exactly.
So why again then you explained this to me a minute ago, but I kind of forgot then. Why is she rejecting you? Why does she avoid you?
Because I'm not providing, I'm just completely failing to understand what she is feeling and thinking, and instead of focusing on that, I am trying to kind of make a problem solve, which is having exactly the opposite effect.
Yeah, and what effect does it have?
She then shuts me down and shuts me out, and she doesn't want to talk anymore and gets angry.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So when she tries to share with you, you push her away. Is that what you said? Is that what happened here?
Yeah.
You see that?
Yeah.
And I just want to add that, Indrani, I totally get it, because as a parent, it's so hard to see your kid in distress or doubting themselves or wondering if they made the right decision. And so instead of being able to sit with that discomfort or uncertainty or even regret, we just want to make them feel better. Exactly. And then we cheerlead, and then they feel profoundly misunderstood, right? Because that's not what they're trying to say. But I totally get it, because I make that. I shouldn't. I should know better. And yet I make that mistake all the time too, because it's just so hard to see someone that you love, in distress.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly right. Exactly right. That, I just want to make it all better. Like it'll be okay. It'll just make it all better.
Yeah.
Oof.
And David always says, like, when someone does that, you just want to wring their neck, right? Because it's like, it's not going to be all better and it's okay, or it's not all good. It's like it can make you crazy when someone does that, but like all of us do it, right? It comes from this place of love.
I'm just blown away.
Isn't it? It's really profound. I mean, you're obviously no dummy. You got this instantly, like lightning, and that's why you got into this PhD program. There's some tiny little part of your brain that's very good, but it's amazing how as humans we can't see how we're creating our own reality. Our heart is broken because we can't understand why my daughter's constantly avoiding me. Well, that's because you push her away every time you interact with her. And it's such a brutal message, and yet it's a message of hope. And because of, you have to be so strong to be willing to see that as you're doing. And when I do that myself, I feel so ashamed, and it's so humiliating to look at my own role. But then maybe we can turn the thing around by the same token. You see how powerful you've been. Maybe we can use that power in another direction.
Yeah, this is making so much sense, because she's very close to my sister and was very close to my mother. And I used to always think, well, what is it that, what am I missing? And this is exactly what I was missing. They were like, yeah, tell me more. What was that? And either I wanted to make it better, because pushing away sounds exactly right. I either wanted to make it better, or I would take hold, right? Maybe you could have done this differently. Maybe you could have done that differently. Oh my gosh.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. I am your host, Rhonda Borovsky, the director of the Feeling Great Therapy Center. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.